everyone. Oh, it looks like I scared a couple of you there. Uh, we are going to go ahead and get started. Folks are welcome to trickle in as they need as well. But welcome to our 2025 State of the Church. We're going to have some slides up here. There won't be a ton. But this is really an opportunity to do what I kind of like what I like to call somewhat of a future-oriented reflective review on last year. In other words, not just looking back at last year and thinking, hey, recounting all the things that happened. We have newsletters that do that, but to kind of pinpoint some of these highlights that happened this last year that we're working through and that are kind of propelling us into the future, if you will. So today marks to the Sunday my second year here at First Press, which is exciting and all of that good stuff. Um, there's a lot that goes on in the life of our congregation. And I would say actually for our size, right, just roughly just under 1,000 members, we are incredibly active. There is a lot that goes on in this building. Ask Caroline, ask Pete, or any of our other staff about all of the things that happen here that are really impacting people's lives. And that's something for us to celebrate together. You guys can go to the next slide here. So this kind of forward-looking review that we're going to do, I'm going to talk about each one of these things, and then depending on what our time looks like, I'll have some opportunity for questions if people do have any. But we're in what I call a different type of transition. There's all sorts of transitions that happen. There's pastoral transitions. There's transitions that happen in society that affect churches, things like COVID, all sorts of stuff like that. But the transition that we're in, it's a really good transition. In fact, we've moved from a church that has had some declining membership to showing, like this morning, growing membership. A church without a senior pastor to a church with a senior pastor. We have a church that now has kind of some room for our staff to be thinking about what are the new things that we want to be doing. They have space and the energy to be able to do that, various new ministries and initiatives. We have congregants who are doing the same and asking those same questions. Can we do this? What can we do here? How can we expand our reach? How can we increase our impact? And we're moving from what I called last year that I shared with all of you, kind of what I said was a historical startup, right? A church that has this long history, but has a lot of nuts and bolts that need to get tightened, if you will, to solidifying our church as a real operating organization. And we're changing things. And these changes have ripple effects. They have ones now, and they will have ones down the road. Some felt stronger than others. But we're in a period of transition that's really good. We're transitioning from a thing that maybe felt like it was fighting to survive at times, although that's not actually true, to a place that really is thriving. And I think many of you, I get this expressed to me all the time, is that when people come to church, they feel something different. They feel this energy. It's something that even sometimes they can't articulate. And that's kind of this transitional period that we've moved into. Now, that also means with any transition, there's going to be growing pains. And it's easy to think of growing pains as bad, like, oh, this is really hard. But they're not. And there's a lot of things that our congregation may not see up front, but there's growing pains that happen internally and that also impact you. It's things like navigating a new phone system. I know you're so excited about the fact that we have a new voice over IP phone system, right? But here's the deal, is before we got this, I was missing all of these phone calls because what we had wasn't working. Right? That impacts you. There's things internally in which we have had to grow with and figure out that we can't do necessarily immediately, that might take time, that impact our working and our ministry lives together. We are beginning the process, which you're going to hear a lot more about, of transitioning our CRM system. to a new system so that A, we can have all of our membership right, B, we can have all of our giving records correct, all of that stuff. And that requires a ton of work. It requires time. It requires transitioning databases, which takes forever and is frankly a big old pain for us to do. I know everybody thinks like oh, church like just kind of happens. Like there are so many things behind the scenes that the staff navigates, that session does, that yeah, there's some growing pains. It's not bad, it's good, and it's part of what happens within transition. And frankly, if you have kind of this idea of um, orientation, disorientation, and reorientation, the disorienting part, that's actually the places where we grow. And that's what we're doing. We're in that area where things are not bad. Frankly, they're great, but we're working through them to get to this reorientation. And then we will have another time of disorientation and then reorientation and over again. And those things in the life of a church, they're really healthy. Um, we have new systems, we have some new ways of doing things, and we've got an evolving staff. We're in the process of finishing hiring a youth minister. We have another open position. Um, so there's things like that. We also have kind of shifted from this looking back mindset to a looking forward one, which will create more growing and more growing pains, and that is all normal and okay. One of the things that I have especially taken notice of this past year, which I think speaks not just to our staff, but to all of you, is that, and I talked about it with our new members this morning, is First Press really is a place for all. And it's a place where people are trying to figure out what it means to do faith and life together amidst a world that is incredibly divisive and divided and has lots of enemies. Um, and we're not going to do that. And this is a place where we have been really welcoming. And I talked about this last year at our State of the Church. We're going to do church without fear because we're not afraid of having hard conversations. In fact, we invite them because they help us to grow more and more like Christ together. And we're going to do hard things, but we're going to do it in love, and we're going to love each other across difference. And I actually see that materializing, which is really great. A lot of churches say they're going to do this, but let me tell you, it's really hard. And thanks to all of you and kind of stepping forward and into that life together, I do think that we are doing that. We have people from all different walks of life, different traditions. We have college age and young adults. We have people with family. We have people with children and youth. We have people who are single. We have people who are married without kids. We have people from various socioeconomic statuses, various ethnicities, etc., all seeking to be challenged within their micro context how to more faithfully follow Jesus. Last week, I had talked about how people often want a pastor at a church to kind of regurgitate their own thoughts about faith and politics, life, and the world, you name it. And here, we're going to do our best to rely on God's guidance, which will inevitably offer us kind of what I talked about earlier today is a grace that disrupts our desire for status quo and homogeneity in favor of a faith that seeks for us to live here and now as a model for the kingdom of God, not just something in the future, but to do our best to embody what that looks like in this place that we might be sent out into the world. It's that idea of city on a hill, right? A light that shines in the darkness, right? Salt of the earth. We're trying to model that within here so that we can truly live that out there. I see people truly living their faith. Look, the reality is belief is actually pretty easy. It's easy to be like, yeah, I believe this or that. If you do still to this day a statistical approach to understanding religious in America, the majority of the country is still Christian, right? But do we necessarily see people constantly living that out, or at least attempting to do that? And I see this place do it. One of the things that inspired me when I was in the interview process years ago was that people at First Press seemed to not simply care about belief, but they cared about action. So there's a lots of churches where action is kind of secondary or even tertiary to everything else in the church. But here at First Pres, people believe it when James says that faith without works is dead. I see people living out their faith in so many ways and in a lot of different ways too. The ways we live and the actions we undertake, they're not separate from faith here at First Pres. They're an outpouring of it, and I'm still inspired by it. And by the way, people who are not part of this church, I hear from them in the borough, in places where I go to. They're like, man, First Pres is a great place. We know about all the good work that they're doing. That's not a testament to me. It's not a testament to Caroline. It's a testament to all of you. And you actually being committed to attempting, we will be imperfect at it, but living in the ways of Jesus. And I see that on a weekly basis in this place, with members in this place and with members outside of it. One of the things that I talked about last year was that I wanted us to have an authentic evangelism, and we're still exploring what that means. We're still trying to figure out this whole evangelism thing, and what I mean by that is that it isn't necessarily tied to just First Pres, but this is a larger trend, particularly within mainline churches. Many people have a hard time either talking about their faith, if they don't want to talk about their faith, or inviting people to church, and often because they may not want to be associated with a particular type of Christianity. But we know who we are, and we know who God is calling us to be here at First Pres. So amidst strong divisions, epidemics of loneliness, amongst all demographics, especially young men right now, and increasing secularization, we have this really wonderful opportunity, not for the purpose of just growing in number, but for the purpose of offering the light of Christ to a world in need. And like I said, I spoke on this a bit last year. But we need an authentic evangelism which proclaims the gospel with word and deed, but also invites others to join us. And I know that that's a hard thing to do sometimes. So you will not find me on the corner of Market and High Street with a megaphone proselytizing. You will find me in the borough getting to know people, telling them about who we are and what we're doing, and inviting them to come alongside of us. And my hope is that you will join me in that effort of doing that yourselves as well. And lastly, we have an evolving identity. We're a historic church. But as we move from looking kind of back to looking forward, our identity's changing. And this doesn't mean that our history is erased, not at all. In fact, it actually means that it's preserved and continuing to be lived out in new and properly contextualized ways. I was talking to a longtime church member not too long ago, and they said, we were gone a pretty good amount over the summer, only made it to worship a couple of times. And when we came back, there were all of these people that we didn't recognize. He wasn't trying to say that to be critical, but he was excited and hopeful. This is a good thing. Stable leaders and church members paving the way and have paved the way for new church leaders, for new church members who will then eventually do the same for the next generation. And that is really thrilling and really exciting. We have visitors that are exploring First Pres every single week. As you've seen, we have people joining First Pres in every new membership class that we have. And here's not the funnest statistic in the world, but an important one, is our membership is vastly outpacing the number of members who pass away. That is a good thing. Very good thing. There are a lot of churches, and I'm just going to tell you the truth, that are not doing that. And Caroline and I hear about them and from them all of the time. And part of the reason why we believe that we're actually growing is we're just being who we are. We're seeking to follow Jesus in the world. It's really hard, but we have so many wonderful ministries that are not isolated to the walls of this church. That is hugely important. This place doesn't just, like I talked about this morning in my sermon, worship internally, but is sent out to worship with our lives. People hear that, they read it, they see it, and they are impacted by it, even if you're not expressing those words to them. But we have this evolving identity. It's going to keep evolving. That's what happens. We are reformed and always being reformed by the Word of God. And I'll tell you what, I know a lot of Reformed churches that haven't reformed since 1517. Um, so I love, and I say this to my friends and colleagues that you don't know. I say this all of the time. They're like, "Hey, how's it going? You're in your second year at First Pres," and I was like, they're like, what are some of the things you love? What are the challenges? And I'm honest about all of those things. But one of the things I say without a doubt is there are not too many almost 200-year-old historic churches with an architect who also did the U.S. Capitol and built this place, who have this storied history of all sorts of things that are like, you know what? We're going to hire a young brown guy from Southern California to be our senior pastor. And that's what she did. Caroline and I were in a conversation with someone when I first came, and they were like, Caroline was like, "Oh, have you met Andrew? He's the new guy." And he was like, "You're the new youth pastor?" And I'm like, "Nope, no. Senior pastor, maybe youth at heart." Um, and that's what I love. First Pres is historic and not afraid of change, not afraid of and by the way, not change for the sake of change, but change because this is where we feel God calling and leading us. And that's a tremendous gift. And I'll say it's a gift to our church. As your senior pastor, and I think Carolina would agree with me, it's a huge gift to us. I say all the time, I have fun doing ministry here. And ministry is really hard, I'll tell you. It is. You could just ask my wife. She's sitting over there. Don't bombard her after the serve and ask. But it's really hard. Um, and here I get to do it with joy and laughter, and it's wonderful. Um, and all of these, I want to be really clear here, too. There's a lot of really great stuff happening. We're not without our challenges by any means. Um, I get a lot of thanks from all of you, and I'm so thankful for that. But none of this happens without our staff, without every single one of them. The way that worship gets set up, the building being cleaned, our children and our families, operations, ensuring that the heat is on for all of you this winter, right? Mission and care, like every staff person, engagement, you name it. This is not Andrew. This is all of us working together as a team. And I would hate to be by myself in doing this. This place runs and functions in large part because of their commitment to serving alongside one another and serving alongside you. So I'm so thankful. I appreciate the thanks, but our staff is worth all the thanks, and so are you and our elected church leaders. All the ways that all of you volunteer to ensure that this is not going to be a senior pastor-led church. This is going to be a people of God-led church, and that's all of us together. You want to hop over to the next slide? All right, one more. Yeah, one more. There we go. We talked about this last year, is that we have begun the process of strategic planning. We have a committee together that's been meeting, has a meeting coming up in just a week or so. And these are the priorities in which our session, our elders, did a lot of really hard work to begin to prioritize what it is that we are called to do now and in the future. A lot of churches, they do strategic planning, which is really strategic prioritization, and then they never get to the actual planning and implementation part. We're trying to buck that trend and actually get stuff done. It doesn't happen overnight. Schedules are maybe the hardest thing for us to nail down for anything in the life of church. But worship and music, we worship together in all of the ways that we can, through song, through Sunday morning, in our lives. you name it. And we want to ensure that that is a core part, continues to be a core part of who we are and how we do our faith lives together. And that includes things like, look, and I hear you. I have a background in audiovisual, and that's really important to me because if you can't hear the sermon, it doesn't really matter that much. If you can't hear the music, it doesn't really matter that much. And if you're sitting at home wishing you can worship online and all you see is the screens and no sound, then you're like, well, I guess I'll do something else today, right? Like that is a huge gift that we can live stream and have in-person worship, and we want that to be as best as we possibly can. In fact, it's a piece of communication and it's a piece of hospitality. And if it's communication and hospitality, then it's also pastoral care. And we want to make sure that you sitting in the sanctuary can see and hear really well. And if you're unable to make it in person, we want you at home to be able to see and hear as best as possible so that you can really feel like you're part of this. And that means we're going to have some improvements in terms of audio visual in this place. And I hear from people all the time. We have sound issues. We know that. And that doesn't go unnoticed. So that will be a huge part in what we do. And also investing even greater in 1045 and continual long-term investment in 9 a.m. Faith formation. We've talked about study. That is growing ourselves in faith in all of the ways that we can, and ensuring that we are an intergenerational church within the confines of faith formation. We want not just to be a multi-generational church, and you've probably heard me say this before, a lot of multi-generational churches, people from all different age groups. We want people in this place, whether you are like my son's age as 2 years old, my youngest one, or you're 92 years old. We want people to know each other, to care for each other, and to worship with each other. We've got 80-year-olds teaching Sunday school. Now, that doesn't mean that every 80-year-old should teach Sunday school, but we have 80-year-olds teaching Sunday school and knowing children and children knowing them. That is such a beautiful thing. And if you were to go all the way back into the early church, people worshiped in each other's homes. There was noise, there was sound, there were babies, there were elders, you name it, and everyone in between. Um, and so we want our faith formation to be intergenerational. We want it to be um, really good and effective and pique your curiosities. And that also means things like we would love the future opportunity to bring in speakers that are really important voices to help to challenge us in our faith. Building and technology. We have an incredible historic building that all of you know and this whole community knows. In fact, I was talking to someone the other night at an awards ceremony from the Westchester Business District that we received to support we've received a grant to support our Wednesday lunches. And I was talking to someone there, and they said, hey, First Press does a great job ensuring that the building is really, really taken care of, an important fixture in the life of this community. They were like, yeah, we just saw you got cranes out there painting. In fact, thanks to Dennis Park and our entire building and property team who work so diligently to ensure that this place is preserved for another 200 years of worship, that it is clean and hospitable, all of that good stuff. And technology goes into that too, audiovisual. And I'll tell you what, these walls are not hollow. Which means that cords and wire and all of that stuff getting through them is a challenge, and that's a challenge that we're going to have to navigate down the road. But we want to preserve this place for another 200 years of worship and beyond. Mission and evangelism. Huge priority for us, living out our faith in all of the ways that we can, from what we do on Wednesday lunches to affordable housing, etc. Our mission partners, you name it. But one of the things is that First Press hasn't done a significant mission initiative really since our affordable housing at 122 West Minor. We have all sorts of mission initiatives that happen, but I think there's something that's in our near future where we will put our hearts and our minds together to prayerfully consider what it is that God is calling us to do uh, to impact and transform people's lives. We have so many stories of people's lives who've been changed in the present and for the future that are just incredible. We want to share those stories and we want to grow them as well. And then staffing and organization. I talked about how our staff and our and the way that we kind of operate, there's changes and there's growth. And we're going to need more of that because we are such an active congregation. I was in a finance meeting sometime over the summer, I think, and someone asked about staffing, and they said, frankly, for how busy First Press is, we actually feel a little bit, we feel like we're understaffed. And that might be true. And we're going to have to really consider what that looks like in order for us to continue in doing the ministry and the work that God is calling us to do. So those are kind of our 5 priorities in strategic planning. We've got a great strategic planning team that is going to be working together and is going to start opening up conversations with our committees and with all of you to help us ensure that when we do, hopefully next year at this meeting, present to you a strategic plan, that we will be in really good shape to enact that. Will you go to the next slide? Awesome. In order to do that, here are some of the things that we are going to need. We're going to need faithful leadership, not just from your staff or elected leaders who are serving on committees, but just regular worshipers, people who show up on Sunday morning. Maybe you're part of this group or that group, and maybe you're not. You just come to worship every Sunday, which we're so happy about. But we're going to need people to step up in terms of leadership across the board. Leadership in your engagement with the church, with others, leadership in the example that you set, leadership in living out your faith inside this place and outside of it. I've served previous churches. In fact, there's one example where this church constantly would say, hey, remember this family? And it was a family that had sadly, tragically passed away. And they would say, remember this family? Oh, we miss them. And they kept saying it over and over. They were huge. They were generous financially, generous with their time, just kind of those pillars of the church. And finally, somebody in a session meeting stood up and said, why do we keep talking about them? Of course we miss them, but who will step up to go in their place? We have a lot of people who have been long-standing, committed leaders in this church, and we are so grateful. But we are going to have to slowly find ways to pass those torches of leadership, and that also means that we're going to have people step up, learn, and grow through that. And that's not just that's a challenge to all of you, but that's exciting too. The more you invest in a place, the more meaning and value you will get out of it. And frankly, the better you will be and the better that we will be. And this is going to be a communal effort. This is not just going to be our staff. It's not just going to be our elders. It has to be all of us. We all have to embrace the vision. We're going to struggle through it. There'll be growing pains through it. There'll be transitions through it. And all of those things are healthy and good for us. And we will do them with Christ as our center. Now, in order to do a lot of these things, there's going to be a capital campaign at some point. And we haven't had a capital campaign in quite some time. I think since the buildings. Am I right on that? Yep. And it's time for us. We have capital improvements to make. We are excited about the potential of a large mission initiative, something brand new for us, increasing our intergenerational worship and engagement and faith formation, all of that good stuff, our technology, you name it. And that's going to require faithful stewardship of our resources, from our time and our talents to our finances. And it'll be necessary for us to live into what God is calling us to. Stewardship is going to be coming up really, really soon here. And we're excited about what God is calling us to through the end of 2025 and all the way through 2026. And down the road, there's going to be even greater with a capital campaign that will come out of our strategic planning. And lastly, we're going to be spirit-led. We can have all of these plans in the entire world. But at the end of the day, it is God who is going to guide us and direct us. That also means we're going to have to be nimble at times, and be able to pivot at certain times. We may have ideas, and then we may talk to all of you in listening or breakout sessions and be like, yep, we're not going to do that idea. Or we may decide we're doing something and God's calling us to invest even more in it. So we're going to be spirit-led through all of this. We can have this great organization with all the pieces together and everything, but at the end of the day, there is something different about us being a family of God, of us being a worship community. And that is that we don't do this for the purpose of growing bigger or being better. We do this for the purpose of serving God. We may grow in number. We will, without a doubt, grow in our commitment to following in the ways of Jesus, as long as we keep our worship, our community, and our lives centered on who Christ is in the world. I am super excited. I'm thankful for this last year. I'm really excited for the future of our church, and all that is going to be happening. I'm so thankful for our session, our staff, our strategic planning committee that is going to help us to critically think about what it is that God is calling us to do. And I'm thankful for the work that they've already done. So that's my time, I think, before we got 10 minutes until the next service. But feel free to send me an email, give me a call if you have questions, you want to talk about this more. Before we do that, are there any immediate questions that anyone has that I can quickly answer? Barb. Yeah, so Barb asked if there was a way for congregants to give input to the strategic plan. Yes. So what we're going to do, we'll probably do some surveys, but we're also probably going to hold some listening sessions. There'll be sessions with committees of the session, but I will likely host a couple of listening sessions where we hear directly from you. Yep. Carmelo. Thanks, Carmelo. Awesome. Uh, I give thanks to God for all of you and for our staff. They are so wonderful and our shared ministry together. Thanks, everyone.